I'm Matthew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. Okay, welcome to I used to call them a special edition of Law Subscribed Live, but I'm doing at least one or two of these a month at this rate. So welcome to another episode of Law Subscribed Live. If you're here with us live on LinkedIn, then make sure that you participate. We're monitoring the comments, or at least I am on LinkedIn. So make sure if you have questions, if you have input, participate in the conversation. That's one of the benefits of being live here on LinkedIn. Also, Sateesh and I follow us on LinkedIn. Make sure that you stay in touch and you follow and like and share everything that we're posting, because the conversation that we're going to have today is very related to the content that we're talking about on LinkedIn. So with that, Sateesh Nori, go ahead, and just in case my audience isn't familiar with your work, give yourself a little introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew. My name is Sateesh Nori. I'm a senior legal innovation strategist at a consulting company called Just-Tech. Before that, I was a legal services lawyer in New York City for about 22 years. So really happy to be here and talk about this really, really important topic, the billable hour.
Yeah. Who knew you could have a podcast of almost 150 episodes just about ditching the billable hour and moving lawyers to alternative fees, with a focus on subscription, but still like a lot of alternative fee talk and on this podcast. I do want to recommend folks, and I'll make sure to post it in the comments after this. Sateesh was recently interviewed by Tom Martin on the Law Droid Manifesto. So, Sateesh, you and Tom got deep on your background and your experience and your
Yeah,
history, and that's going to make a great companion episode to this conversation we're having. But I really want to get into and not that you didn't on his, but I want to focus the time we have on the substance of the work that you've done, that you're doing, and that you're going to do, including your upcoming book and Substack that you're writing called The Augmented Lawyer. Do you want to just level set for us on a little bit of your journey of what brought you to wanting to write this book?
sure. So as I mentioned, I've been a legal services lawyer for 22 years, representing low-income tenants in New York City in all of the courts. And one of the things that I realized is that we as lawyers will never be able to meet the demand for legal services, for access to justice. There will never be enough time to do all the work that's needed. And that got me thinking about time. Like, how do lawyers use their time? What is the most important commodity for lawyers? And unfortunately, it's time, and hence the billable hour question. But for me, it set me on a journey to look for tools, methods, systems that could help me leverage my time better, to help me help more people. And when I saw my first AI demo of a RAG bot a couple of years ago, it felt like a lightning bolt struck me in the head. And I thought I could never go back to working in the same way that I've been working for 2 decades. I've got to work differently, primarily because I want to help more people. But as I zoom out a little bit and I thought about the entire legal profession and the way that we work, what we prioritize isn't justice or truth, it's time. Everything is about time. Everything is about the second, the minute, the hour, our days, weeks, months. And that's wrong. That's just broken. And so I started writing this book called The Augmented Lawyer to really try to predict what the legal profession is going to look like. Maybe in 6 months, maybe in a year, but very soon. This stuff is coming for us all. And we've got to be ready for it. And it could actually help us if we think about it creatively and change our perspective on the way that we work.
Yeah, and I love the term augmented lawyer, and we're gonna abstract that concept in a second. But first, I want to ask, because I'm sure my longtime audience members are wondering, Sateesh, did you ever have to bill by the hour?
No, I never had to bill by the hour because I never worked in a private firm. I started in legal services right out of law school, right after September 11th in New York City. The office that I ended up working in had to be moved because one of the engines of one of the planes that hit the Twin Towers landed on it and ended up moving to Brooklyn. So, long story short, I've never had to bill by the hour, but I've had the same pressures to account for my time and my efforts. Billing by the case, for example, billing by the client. counting the beans at the end of each week and month, to funders. All of these systems are very related in terms of like prioritizing time over output or effort or justice or truth.
Right, but I really do think the fact that you haven't had to build time also means that you were not stuck in that dogmatic mindset of time equals money, right? Like you talk
Yes,
about
that's
being
true.
yeah, you talk about being an augmented lawyer. I'm sure even back then you're thinking, what technology is available to me to be able to do more work for more people to get the good work done? Am I right?
Exactly right. Yeah. It's freeing to think about things outside of that framework. And I know many of my friends who went into corporate law were literally trapped in these cycles of like billing and how many hours and skipping lunch and working overnights and trying to just like hustle to get to that next level without realizing, hey, it's a pyramid scheme. Like half of you aren't going to make it no matter what you do. And that's another part of the model that hopefully we can talk about.
Right. Now, I also understand like you're teaching, and part of it is like the education and what we're learning in school. Like I didn't learn anything about becoming a partner or the billable hour model or the business of law in law school. Now, granted, I graduated like almost 11 years ago now, and I know some schools are doing a much better job at teaching that stuff now, but we still I could probably count on one hand how many schools are teaching that stuff. So like part of it's a legal education issue and a technology problem of not learning the tech and learning how to augment your skills in law school, right? Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things about law schools that's really difficult to overcome is they're very expensive. And, if you're going to spend $200,000 to go and get this degree, of course, you're going to try to make as much money as you can to pay back that debt. And the most direct path is often, working in these large corporate firms. In fact, it's the most prestigious path. It's the path that your law school wants you to take. They want you to get rich and then give back to the law school or to show on some statistic that X number of their graduates have gone into big law. So it perpetuates itself. Law school is expensive. You got to make the money to pay for law school. Then law schools promote you for having made the money, and then it just goes on and on and on. And so you can't get out of that trap, that mindset of like success means working in these places. And these places succeed because they make a lot of money. And they make a lot of money because they bill in a certain way. And all of it's broken in some way.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we're trying to do is we're trying to fix a broken system at least to the extent that we can. Lawyers have been augmenting themselves for decades, right? I mean,
Yeah.
starting arguably, with the typewriter and the dictaphone
Yeah.
and like the fax machine, right? So like augmenting
Yeah.
the way we practice is not necessarily a new thing, right? It's just the way we can do it now. Doesn't
Yeah.
necessarily comport with billing by the hour. So, like,
Yeah.
tell us about that history that brings us to now and, like, the types of augmentations available to lawyers and legal services and just legal services either by a lawyer or not a lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, there's a great account by this legal futurist named Richard Susskind, who talks about like the future of legal work and legal practice. And his new book is literally sitting in my mailbox downstairs in my lobby. So I can't wait to get it. But there is this sense of, are the courts a service or are they a place? Are lawyers meant to really democratize the law? Or are they gatekeepers who only serve those who can pay? There's this great example of a case in New Jersey called Cross v. Lamb, which I think was like in 1959 or 1960, in which a lawyer in a personal injury trial, in his summation, rolled out a blackboard and wrote down the calculations of the damages that he thought his client was entitled to in this like slip and fall at a construction site. And on appeal, the other side argued that this use of a blackboard and chalk was improper use of technology and it confused and misled the jury.
Oh
So
my
that's where
gosh.
lawyers are coming from. That's our thought process, is that we hate anything new, anything different, anything that would augment us, improve our skills, make us more efficient. I mean, think about that. Like we are against anything that makes us more efficient. That's our default.
Oh
That's
wow.
broken.
That is completely believable, although it's hard to believe, right? Like being in the profession. Okay, I got to tell a small anecdote that's related.
Yeah.
Okay, so part of what got me set on this whole path, which I don't really talk about very much, on launching this podcast and the subscription model and everything, was I was running for chair of the Young Lawyers Division in the ABA. And this was part of my platform. Let's ditch the billable hour. Let's increase access to justice. And by the way, increase attorney bottom lines. Because when you're serving more people at scale, even if you reduce your prices, because of this massive latent market opportunity, which is something I also want you to talk about, Sateesh, we could actually make more money and help more people. And that's okay too, right? Now it went totally over the heads of like everybody in the ABA, but we had to record these speeches that we gave, and because I used we weren't allowed to use like fancy editing stuff or something. Like we weren't allowed to use technology that would go that you have to pay money for because we wanted to level the playing field, and I kind of get that, right? But I used a virtual background in Zoom, which was democratized, free technology for everybody, right? And it went like the elections committee didn't want to allow it because it would be unfair. And I did it live, and it's a virtual background live. I didn't do any post production. It was all live. I appealed it. I took it to the board, the whole council. And somebody even said I'll never forget. Someone was like, she was like, this is the reason why people don't like us or lawyers, like a lawyer on the board. She's like, this is ridiculous that we're even having this discussion. So,
Yes.
and that was just, that was like 4 or 5 years ago. So not
Yeah.
that long ago that we're
Yeah.
still, whether it's in the courtroom or it's amongst
Yeah.
lawyers amongst themselves, this fear of technology is ever
Yeah.
present. And it's really
Yeah.
unfortunate. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll let you just comment on that, and then
Yeah,
I'll have some more
absolutely. I mean,
questions.
that is such a great example of how we value time more than anything else. Like our time is the most precious commodity, not anything that makes us more efficient. That's a contradiction, I don't know what is, right? We need to use our time better. We need to use technology to help us do more work. And using a virtual background or a blackboard or even AI is a great way to do that, to get the law into the hands of more people.
Yeah, yeah. So thinking back to this idea of this latent legal market, right? And the augmented lawyer, how do those things in your opinion, go hand in hand?
Yeah, so according to the Legal Services Corporation, 92% of the civil legal justice problems in America go unaddressed each year. 92%. So that means the 1.3 million lawyers in America are really only serving 8% of the people. Probably they're serving corporations and they work for the government and so on. And so that's a huge market. And so the way we should look at it is what keeps the average lawyer from being able to serve someone at a price that they can afford, right? One of the things is the overhead, right? We have to hire staff, we have to be able to answer the phones, we have to do compliance and billing. Sometimes we need office space, we need associates to do legal research, all of this stuff costs money. And so the price goes up, right? A consultation for a lawyer in New York City is probably something like $5,000 just to consult with someone. Who can afford that when, 100 million people in America have less than $200 in their bank account? It's impossible. So I think the way that we can augment that is to say, what technology allows a solo practitioner, a small firm, to outsource some of this day-to-day work and be able to focus on the legal work, right? That's what they want to do anyway. And to be able to reduce their price, help a lot more people at scale. And I think the result is some people will make less money, but more people will make more money, right? And unfortunately, the mindset that's drilled into us in law schools is you can make a lot of money, just work harder. And again, it's a pyramid scheme. So everyone can't make more money. It's impossible. But we can all agree that each of us will make a little more money, and let's knock the people off at the top of the pyramid. Some of these very same law firm partners who caved in, not to get political, to the federal government and Trump, they're making $10 million a year. Let's bring that fee down. Let's bring their salaries down, and let's everybody make, $100,000 a year and make a decent living in these small towns where there's no lawyers available. I think that's really a better way to look at. And that's how we see this augmentation that I'm hopefully going to be able to write about and complete my book at some point.
It's still a really interesting idea, and I actually think that we're going to see those big law firms at risk if they don't make changes, in particular to the billing model and the pyramid model of partnership, because you're going to have, and I see it doing what I do, having this podcast, big law attorneys who are younger or less
Hmm.
experienced, less entrenched, reach out and be like, hey, I didn't know that it was possible to have like a thriving, low overhead, solo practice law firm, not billing by the hour, actually helping people and making a six-figure income. Like
Yeah.
that's an option.
And doing interesting work.
I well, it depends on what you mean by interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because I will
Yeah.
say,
Yeah.
like, I'm never going to be arguing in front of the Supreme Court, any
Fine.
Supreme Court,
Yeah.
right?
But most big law attorneys aren't either.
That's true. That's true,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, and they're doing like paper pushing, like
Yeah.
drudge work, and I've I help clients with like dog groomer agreements or like comedy club
That sounds
agreements. Like,
great.
I mean, I have fun and like I'm actually helping people, and I'm seeing like even when I'm on the if I'm on the comedy club side, or if I'm on the comedian side, or if I'm the dog groomer small business side, or the consumer side, because I do both sides of that. Like I'm the only lawyer like in
Yeah.
that transaction, right? So
Wow. Yeah.
like this dog groomer place needs to hire me, like, and actually draft like an enforceable agreement, like
Yeah.
that type of
Yeah.
thing. So it's not like I have fun with that because I'm
Yeah.
actually also helping people, right? And so like that's part of the fun, but it's not like the sexy reasons you go to law school or they tell you about because we're all prepared and trained to be appellate lawyers, and we just
Yeah.
don't do it.
True. Right. Like, why is so much effort spent on con law in law school when, 0.01% of lawyers actually practice con law, and those lawyers never die? They're going to be doing it for, 80, 90 years. And instead, we don't talk about like, contracts between regular people like the ones that you're dealing with that come up every single day, leases and job, contracts and loans and all these things that people deal with every day.
Yeah, yeah, and the technology though does really make it easier for me to deliver these services, right? And so I don't I consider myself AI augmented, right?
Yeah, of
But
course. Yeah,
but
yeah.
but on my LinkedIn profile, I refer to it as AI enhanced, and the vast
Yeah,
majority of
perfect.
lawyers who have ditched the billable hour, who I'm interviewing on Law Subscribed, who are practicing, they are leveraging technology up the wazoo, whether it's
Yeah,
AI or automations or whatever, because
yeah,
we're incentivized because less time equals more money when you're
yeah.
not billing by the hour. And so like we're using these tools. Now, one of the things that I know that you're working on, you mentioned it just at the top of the show, is you learned about the RAG bot. And so for the handful of folks who might not be longtime listeners, like you don't know what RAG is, it's Retrieval Augmented Generation. Basically, when an AI, generative AI, is giving you an answer, it's not answering only based on training data. It's going to retrieve information to augment its response that it generates to you. And so this is incredibly powerful tool, and I'm leveraging a few different versions of it. But like, tell my listeners about listeners, watchers. What is a podcast anymore, Satish? Tell them about
All
like
of
what
us.
you're yeah what you're doing in this space, and what interested you, and like and why the technology is actually super valuable and accurate.
Yeah, it's a really great question and great description of a ragbot, by the way. I'm going to take that from you and borrow it.
Sure.
So, what we do as lawyers is we kind of distill information that comes from statutes, regulations, case law, and we try to explain it to regular people. Like, what does that really mean? How do I make that work for me in my situation? That's what lawyers do, right? And unfortunately, there are restrictions on lawyers doing that. It's called the unauthorized practice of law, and it's actually a crime for non-lawyers to give that kind of help to like demystify the law, to explain exactly what someone should do based on their reading of the law. So what RAGBots do, retrieval augmented generation, is they'll take a complex set of rules, regulations, case law, whatever, any kind of content, videos, PowerPoint presentations, and ingest that and then generate an answer to a specific question based on that exact set of information. And so, I worked on this bot to help tenants in New York City get repairs in their apartments. And it's called Roxanne AI. And it's housed within a nonprofit in New York City. And it's live as of January 7th. You can check it out right now. And the reason that, it's important is most tenants in New York City, they can't get this kind of information without going and waiting in line at a courthouse for several hours, or calling a hotline and being on hold for 90 minutes, or just looking it up themselves on Google, and who knows what they get, or go to Reddit, right? Who knows what they get there. But with a Ragbot, you can make sure that they get curated information that's specific to their context and give them steps, actionable steps that they can take to help resolve that problem long before it's a legal crisis, right? Long before they're suffering or it's too late to help. And so I think RAG are models that can be used in many different legal contexts. Think about bankruptcy. There's a tool called Upsolve that's super useful. Think about consumer debt. Think about, housing conditions like the one Roxanne helps with. Think about immigration, any system. Think about tax, we all just did our taxes last week, right? Think about a RAG bot that can help you answer tax questions because it ingested the IRS code and some of the case law on that topic. This is the kind of stuff that can help not just the average person, but a solo practitioner, maybe solicit new clients, maybe help people at a low fee with very simple questions. And they can do that, over and over again at scale and build a practice doing that. And all you'd have to do is maintain the knowledge base, make sure that it's accurate. That's a new job in the legal profession, maintaining a RAG bot. And it's kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's a natural job at the larger firms, even mid-sized firms that have a law librarian,
Yes,
right? Like this is
exactly.
like people are worried AI is going to get rid of jobs. I mean, it's going to get rid of the way we've done things, but not necessarily get rid of jobs. We're going to pivot, right? Like
Yeah.
tellers do different things that other than what ATMs can do, right? And they were worried
Yeah.
ATMs was going to put banks and tellers out of business, but it didn't. Banks have done other things that have made they do questionable, right?
Right, right.
But
Yeah, but instead of like 1 million lawyers in America, we could have 10 million lawyers in America. That's 9 million more legal jobs.
yeah,
Each person, each one of those people will be doing something slightly different to a different population, but it'll be more meaningful, more important, more relevant, more community based, more specialized. It could be a win-win for everybody.
yeah. Yeah. Now, the podcast version of this that will come out later will have this disclaimer. So I'm just going to give the disclaimer now is there's no
Okay. Yeah.
no legal advice given on this podcast. Everything's
Yeah.
for educational purposes only. But having said that, I'd like us to, from an educational perspective, try to draw this line between legal information versus legal advice. Now, Natalie Ann Knowlton is a big advocate and she's the first person I heard this from some years ago when she was a guest on my podcast, is you could sell and monetize legal information, and you don't have to be a lawyer to do it. And if you are a lawyer, you could then sell legal advice on top of that. And it's just like a fantastic idea that I will always credit to her. But then the question then becomes, where do you draw this line? So like, let's say you build a RAG bot with all the municipal, ordinances and statutes and state law applied to tenants, say like in like a Roxanne, right? And then you're able to query against certain things if you're a tenant or landlord, make sure you're in compliance. Though I'm sure you see less of that
Yeah,
desire.
sure.
But then the moment you put in the contract that your name is attached to, like what if you put in a form contract, like that doesn't actually have
Yeah.
any names in there, right? Like where
Yeah.
is it that you draw that line where now
Yeah.
you're asking against your specific contract? Because at that point, is that legal advice? I mean, what do you think? Again,
Yeah.
educational purposes only, Sateesh.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think where I start is from the perspective of a person who is seeking help. And when they ask a question, what are they looking for? They want to know what they should do. And if we can't tell them what they should do in the status quo, if there aren't enough lawyers, if there's no resources for people to know what they should do, they're going to go elsewhere. They're going to find out what they should do from other sources, right? So that's point number one, is that if we can't deliver, then we gotta do something differently. And we're not delivering right now, right? 92% of people aren't getting their help.
Let me tell you about the brand new sponsor for Law Subscribed, Paxton. I've been using Paxton as my legal AI tool for over 2 years. I continue to evaluate and demo other legal AI tools in the market and still decide to stick with Paxton because of its reliability, its accuracy, its ease of use, affordability, and they do not lock you into a long-term contract. Now, as a transactional and fractional general counsel attorney, I'm using Paxton for all of my substantive and non-substantive legal work, whether that's legal research, analysis, drafting, or enhancing existing legal work product. In the time it used to take me to draft and analyze legal documents, documents. Now, after a little bit of back and forth with Paxton, I have something ready to go in minutes that used to take hours or even days. While I'm no longer a litigator, I could see how valuable Paxton would be when researching a new issue, preparing for a deposition, drafting a motion, or going to trial. So if your firm would benefit from using Paxton as your legal AI tool, then make sure to use the link in the description when signing up to let Paxton know I sent you. That's all about our new sponsor. Now back to the show.
The second thing is this line is so fuzzy, right? And the line was created, 100 years ago, primarily to protect the business of lawyers. And if you think about who those lawyers were, they were white men, you know, and they didn't want anyone else to kind of like, horn in on their business and take away their profits, right? They wanted to create this guild. That's why we have bar exams, bar associations, law schools, all of these barriers to this idea, these rules and laws that are they should be available to everybody, right? Equal access under the law is a principle of our democracy, and yet it fails. The other point I'd make is like these laws never anticipated AI. Like no one imagined, even 5 years ago, we didn't know we would be here right now, let alone like 100 years ago. There would be technology that could synthesize rules and facts and come up with steps for people. That's basically what AI is doing, right? It's generating a set of recommendations based on a previous data set of similar facts, right? And so all of those things put together, requires us to rethink this idea of unauthorized practice of law. And AI gives many of us that opportunity to demonstrate, here's how it works. Tell me I'm wrong, right? And then the other point I'd make is like, what lawyer is 90%, 99% accurate? I'm not. I get hungry around lunchtime. I get tired at the end of the day. To be honest, sometimes I might be hungover. I'm not giving the best idea, advice to people. But a rag bot can work 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It can work in any language, generally speaking, if it's trained. This is an opportunity for us to deliver this type of help to millions of people. And it doesn't mean lawyers go away. Like, we don't want to do that kind of work anyway. No one's doing it. We want to do the more high value, difficult intellectual work that we think we're supposed to be doing anyway when we go to law school. So that's the way I think like we should answer this question of unauthorized practice of law. This new category I call actionable legal information. I'm trying to thread the needle between legal advice and legal information. And I think that's what Roxanne does. And I can't wait to see clones of Roxanne, everywhere. We should have these. But, it's the lawyers that are the most reluctant to take that leap. They don't want to like put these things out yet. They're hesitant.
Right.
But, the great need kind of compels us to try a little bit harder.
Right. Right. Even at a bare minimum, like the use of ragbots, which, by the way, everybody, whether you know it or not, you have access to a non-legal version of this. If you have a Gmail account, it's called Notebook LM, right?
Yeah.
Now it is free, right? And so if it's free, then that means, your information isn't private. As a Google Workspace paid user, I have access to the private version of that. And again, not legal, right? And I'm also able to leverage a tool like Paxton, which is my legal AI tool of choice, to kind of do my own version of this. I could upload a bunch of documents. Todd Martin's Law Droid is a rag bot. Like you could customize way more customization features there, right? Roxanne obviously is out there in the tenant space. And I'm sure
we use something called
spaces.
Joseph, which I should plug because they're another legal tech company that gave us the tech for free to power Roxanne.
Amazing, right? And I think Joseph Q, is that their
Joseph
AI?
Q, exactly right.
Yep. Yeah. I my list that I have is a little over 100 tools, and now it's over 500. It's impossible to keep up. But I remember I tried to demo it, but at the time this was like over 6 months ago. They didn't have like a solo small firm version, but I know they're doing some interesting things in this space too. And so whatever tool you have, but at least you could get exposure to it in a build your own rag bot situation. And so what I'm going to recommend people do, because I'm doing this right now, and I'm doing it in the private version, but this doesn't really matter for privacy, is you take, if you own a house, or even if you're a tenant and you have the manuals of your refrigerator, your all this stuff, upload it. And now you could query using semantic search, hey, give me a chart and table of all the warranty information and when it expires, right?
Fantastic idea. I love that. Right. I'm going to use that too.
Yeah. Yeah, like
All
little
that like
things like
content
that.
you already have that no one looks at, you stick it in a drawer until something bad happens, and then you're basically scrambling to get the answer. Great
Right.
idea.
All your insurance contracts, right?
Yeah.
Like all like everything, like
Yeah.
it should just go into a notebook and notebook LM. Now there's limitations there, right? And with
Yeah.
any free tool, there's both, your stuff that probably isn't private and there's
Yeah.
limitations. But it's not expensive to get a hold of some of these things. And so you could start doing that and just leveraging semantic search, which is let's just think like control F, like but like super advanced, right? Because you could be searching for a word that has multiple meanings and it will find it for you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like that's the power of these RAG bots. Like it can't be understated just in the semantic search way, let alone
Yeah.
the analysis and deductive reasoning that these things could do based on the data set and the knowledge base, like
Yeah.
you said.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great use case to get people over the fears, the anxiety of like how this stuff works, See how this could work for you in your daily life. I've had people try to plan travel. I do trainings at my current job for New York State legal services providers, and it's called AI University. And I'm trying to get the 90 or 100 legal services organizations in New York State to think about AI differently so that we can help more people. And one of the exercises we do is like plan a trip to DC for the weekend, and put in your details. Like I've got two kids, I've got an elderly parent, I'm a vegetarian. I like to go to museums, see what you get. And then turn that into a chart, an itinerary, a travel log, a poem, like whatever you want, and see how this stuff can really work. And then think about the applications to legal work, just in the back of your mind. Keep that brain part of your brain working on how this could leverage your efforts into helping more people.
Yeah, yeah, and the pushback we get from lawyers and from other people is like, well, the AI is not accurate, like it doesn't get things right. Well, that's where RAG comes in, right? Like have the
Yeah.
knowledge base, have the data set. Like when you're planning your trip, like download a bunch of PDFs from the internet
Yes.
or like
Yeah.
connect,
Yeah.
like website links into your RAG bot, which you could do
Yeah.
now with Google's Notebook LM. You could connect just a website.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, then you're saying only give me answers based off the sources that you've selected. I mean, like that's really the power of these things. I mean,
Exactly right. Yeah.
the RAG nature of it cannot be understated. How
Yeah.
useful this is.
Yeah. I think RAG is one of the keys to legal AI. Like I think it is just RAG bots can transform. Forget about all the other, ways you can use AI. Like RAG bots, I think, have such potential to transform access to justice, democratizing legal help, even the work of lawyers day to day.
Yeah, and there is this huge market opportunity, right? And so I think the billable hour, getting rid of the billable hour and making it a little more clear and easy to do legal information in the UPL situation actually kind of go hand in hand because what does the lawyers not billing by the hour do versus and UPL is it prevents competition, right? So we have a lack of competition. In the tax space, you've got tax preparers, you've got accountants, you've got
Mhm.
CPAs, right? And they're doing just fine. They're serving a heck of a lot of people. And we've tried
Yeah.
this with the paraprofessional stuff, and that maybe didn't really work because we're still really protecting the UPL of it all.
Yeah.
So
The business. Yeah.
yeah, I
Yeah.
I I think it would require us to compete. Look, Satish, we're biased because of our license, but I think lawyers are
Yeah.
some of the smartest people I know. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. But one thing I say is like I didn't go to law school to work with lawyers. I really don't like a lot of lawyers. I like you, but I don't like a lot of lawyers, and they make things a lot harder sometimes than they need to be.
Right, but if they had to compete, like my point is they're smart. They're going to
Yeah.
figure it out,
They'll
right? They're going
figure it
to
out. Yeah.
have to use these tools at a minimum to
Yeah.
compete with the free stuff out there, like what Roxanne is doing, to
Yeah.
compete with lawyers not billing by the hour. And I think
Yeah.
they'd figure it out, but it's so protectionist. Like, well, like what do we do about it? And all we could do is I have this podcast. You have
Yeah.
Roxanne, and you're right. You have the Augmented Lawyer Substack and
Yeah.
future book
Yeah.
coming out. But like that's kind of all we could do, right? Is just try to get
Yeah.
the word out.
Yeah. But I think they also have to compete with Google and Reddit and Quora and all of these like, just random places that people are going to be forced to look for information. And to go back to your point, that's a huge market that we're leaving on the table. We're like shooting ourselves in the foot by excluding these opportunities from our work. And if we don't do it, people are going to go where there is help, whether that's good help or not. And particularly like legal services, I think we have a moral obligation to make sure that there's good help out there. Law firms, maybe they're less worried about someone going to Google for a corporate dispute, but, they may have to worry about another law firm that's 10 times more efficient than they are
Yeah.
and can do the same work in half the time or one-tenth the time for a fraction of the cost. They're going to all be thinking about that. And then what does that mean for the average 3L in law school dreaming of a big law job, right? Pretty scary.
Yeah. And hey, look, I think there's also opportunity going back to like the business model of legal services, be it by lawyers or, legal adjacent professionals. Like with Roxanne, there's probably some paid opportunities now, whether it's with Roxanne or not, but something like a, advanced features or like just a separate product where, you
Yeah.
pay like one fee and then you have access for 24 hours to the platform's all advanced features. Or for like
Yeah.
less than that daily fee, that per diem, there's like a monthly subscription, like a $5 or $10 a
Yeah.
month. Something
Yeah.
that's, not there's free versions for people that can't afford that, but for like advanced features, for maybe preparing documents for you on top of
Yes.
just the legal information, like even
Yes.
just charging a little small amount could go a
Yes.
long way. You have lawyers who are charging a subscription just for access to their documents, and sometimes they
Yes.
have a separate LLC that's not a law firm to do that, right?
Yeah.
But there's opportunity there, and with the AI ragbot nature of it all, like just being able to have a conversation is
Yeah.
like real about the stuff is super valuable, and I think worth even a nominal monthly subscription or a per diem fee.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's this idea that I'm working on with Tom Martin actually about helping people get their security deposits back from their landlord after they move out of their apartment. It's a big problem. A lot of landlords, everywhere just don't give it back. They make the tenant chase them, and tenants don't have the time or they don't know how to do it. Well, how about a rag bot that helps you generate a letter with pictures that shows the condition of your apartment to force your landlord to give you your money back, right? And what if you got your money back, you kicked in 20 bucks to the product, right? And that happened hundreds of thousands of times every year. That's a sustainable business model, right? For a small company. That's a product that could work and sustain itself and helps a lot of people along the way too. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, and I think it's a viable B Corp or nonprofit too, right?
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
you
Yeah.
don't charge a lot because profit is not the goal, but having
Yeah.
some income to have sustainability is still
Yeah.
important. So
To
like
keep the thing afloat. Yeah.
totally, and then you could get grants, then you could get volunteers, you get employees who get public service loan forgiveness if something like that's going to be around
Still
in the
exists.
future,
Yeah.
right? Right? We don't get too political on the show, but
Yeah. Yeah.
politics are there. Like
The reality. Yeah.
yeah, right. Like constitutional law is now also like one of the most important areas of law, and
Of
also
course.
is it? Like,
Right.
do we like so
Right. We've hit both topics in this podcast.
right, right, yeah. So I really think that there's a lot of business opportunity out there, and the lawyers, I think being behind it still is important, right? Because there
Mhm.
are enough of the lawyers out there that are actually practicing that are unhappy with what they're doing. Like, here's business opportunity. Like
Mhm.
even running a nonprofit, like Amanda Carey comes to mind, who has a firm in Illinois. She does criminal and family law, and she founded her law firm as a nonprofit for like all these same reasons, right? So, and I think she's like executive director, and chairperson of the board, like of her nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so, so it's just like there are really innovative ways to tackle these kind of issues, but you can't be thinking about time equals money or billable hours when you're
That's right.
going down this route.
That's right. Yeah. I think that's the thing to underline is we need to change the way we change our values. Our values should be truth and justice, access, and we make a modest living too. There's nothing wrong with that. But what it is now is, the dream of making $10 million a year for the select few, and everyone's chasing that dream. And most of us are never going to get there. And the result is like, millions of people have no lawyers, and, hundreds of thousands of lawyers are miserable. But that's the system we have now. That's the result of the billable hour.
Right. How many marriages are they on at this point? Right?
Yeah. Whole other problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of it. Look, I when I was going to law school, I'm a first generation attorney, but I was like, hey, I'm white, I'm male, maybe I'll go down this route, and I'll try to get into big law, and maybe at least that way I could like live like a very sustainable but like low cost lifestyle and pay off all my student loans
Yeah.
within the first 5 years. And then I got my first grades back, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna need to network. That's not an option
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
anymore.
It's tough. Yeah.
Right? Like you're graded on a curve in law school, so
Yeah.
everybody there is smart, but only there's only a few A's to go around.
Yeah.
So that became not an option for me. But I like look at where I am now, serving the latent legal market. But I wanted that life because in law
Mm.
school, like you just don't know. So
Yeah.
then are you also Satish? I know you're talking to the legal community because you're doing your all the legal podcasts, but. Are you talking to college students? Are you talking to high school students? Like, are you getting the word out to those communities too?
Yeah, and I'm hoping the book, The Augmented Lawyer, is actually a book aimed at someone thinking about law school. Like that's the person I have in mind who's going to read this book. And so I'm writing it to kind of describe what is it like to go to law school? Why did lawyers ever exist to begin with? How is the legal practice changing? What does AI mean for it? And what should you be thinking about right now if you're going to go down this path?
Yeah.
And so I want to kind of disabuse this notion that we see on TV. Everyone asks me if my life is like Suits. And I'm like, I've watched one episode of that show and I found it to be ridiculous, entertaining, but like that's not the way it is. But like I think too many people think it's like Law and Order or Suits or some like, John Grisham novel that they're going to be living as lawyers. That's not the reality. Like we need to like change that mindset of what it is that lawyers are supposed to do. It's actually a lot more noble than what our media, sometimes tells us. But it's definitely less glamorous most days. And, it's a meaningful, important job. And we need more people doing it. And that's not the model we have now.
We do, and it needs to be more affordable, which kind of brings us back to earlier part of the conversation, right? Like the the section of legal education and admissions to the bar has now accredited some all online programs. The
Hmm.
problem is they're at brick and mortar institutions, and so it costs the same. But
Uh,
I hope that will pave the path for some all online, no brick and mortar law schools that folks can go to, and it should cost half as much, if not less. And then I think
yeah,
we could see a huge spike in the amount of lawyers that we see. Because we need more lawyers without question, but
yeah,
it's hard to say to a high school or college student, the opportunity cost is worth it. It's like, it's
right.
hard.
It's really hard. Yeah, it's really hard. And you know who's going to be against that model is law schools. Law schools are going to fight to the bitter end against non-brick and mortar institutions, right? Because it's a business in itself. There's a thing I ask sometimes when I meet a law professor is, would you rather have the problem that you're working on be solved tomorrow? Or would you rather publish about that problem in the Harvard Law Review? And I think if you're honest with yourself, I think most law professors would say, like, I'd rather publish in the Harvard Law Review because that's the game that I've entered, right? I'm in this arena, and if I don't publish, I lose my job. I care about the problem, sure, but I also care about my career and my ambition.
Yeah. Yeah, I think law professors, going back to competition of it all, because lawyers are not like I actually antitrust was like my 1A in law school.
Yeah,
Otherwise it was A
nice.
minuses, B and B's. But like when you start thinking in that economic mindset in terms of competition, if there's online accredited law schools, now I could be a law professor and I could teach at a lot of law schools,
Yeah,
right?
uh-huh.
So the student benefits because now they can
Yeah.
get the best
Mhm.
law professor from anywhere, and the law professor could have multiple sources of income at the same time without having to go anywhere. And
Yeah.
so then you could pay like online or in-person law schools would pay more to have a captive law professor at that point, possibly,
True.
right? To not let
Right.
them go. So I actually think opening it up for competition might end up benefiting the law professor. Just
Yeah.
putting that out there into the ether. We'll
Yeah,
see. We'll
it's
see if anyone picks
possible.
up on that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I think it might hurt some at the top, but it'll benefit a lot of people at the middle, right?
Yeah,
Just like with, the billable hour and the pyramid model of law firms. And
yeah.
like who are we whose side are we on? Are we on the side of the people, the elites, or are we on the side of the vast majority of people who want to do something positive?
Yeah, yeah. So wrapping up the conversation here, I have one more question for you about Roxanne because, and is that Well, two more questions then, because
Yeah.
this is a question about it. Is it just for tenants in New York, or is it
Yes,
anywhere?
just for tenants in New York. But,
Okay.
again, like it's available. Anybody wants to plug in their own knowledge base. We're in talks with some folks in Philadelphia and a law clinic at Penn. It could be made anywhere. I
Yeah.
think it's a easy opportunity for folks.
Yeah. So here in Illinois, we have, I'm sure you've heard of Illinois Legal Aid Online.
Yeah.
And so I think like last year they launched like a RAG bot related to their platform, or like a third party did or something. But that's in a similar space. They do landlord tenant, but they do kind of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'm familiar with it. Yeah.
yeah, so going down market, like I've gone down market, my subscriptions start at $20 a month and $50 a page, right? So like I'm serving the latent legal market. I also serve institutional clients who are sick of billing by the hour,
Mm.
or being billed by the hour. But in any event, like sometimes if a potential client or an existing client comes to me and like Illinois Legal Aid Online could solve their problem, I'm just going to send them to Illinois Legal Aid Online because even though
It's
I
more
might be able,
efficient.
yeah, it's more
Yeah.
efficient. I might be able to charge $50 a page, but even sometimes, like they are still paying me that 20 at a minimum that $20 a month. And sometimes the best, like I'm not incentivized billing by the hour to like bill a bunch of
Yes.
hours. So it's like they're already
Yes.
a client, like they're paying me. My
Yeah.
value is giving them the best advice that I can, and sometimes it's
That's
use
great.
Illinois Legal Aid Online. So my question for you then, Satish, is have you seen any lawyers sending their clients to Roxanne?
Yeah, we had to look into that. We're just a bunch of volunteers, so we don't have our handle on the data the way that we might if this was our full-time job. But, I'm sure that legal services lawyers are. I send people to Roxanne because I don't have time to help unless someone's facing an eviction, right? It's
Hmm.
triage.
Yeah.
And so, I think that's another way to look at it is like, hey, if you have something like this on your website and you're a legal aid provider, how many fewer phone calls is that every day? How many fewer walk-ins? How much more capacity are you building for your existing staff? That's a whole other way to look at the benefits of a ragbot.
Yeah. Yeah. So as we round out the conversation here, you're also working at Just-Tech, and we didn't really even talk about that. You talked about that with Tom, but like tell us a little bit about, what you're doing at Just-Tech and then where folks can, follow you, follow up with you, all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, what I do at Just Tech is kind of like our conversation today. I want to evangelize about using AI to help access to justice. And I'm trying to use my like brief experience. It's only been a couple of years that I've been working with AI tools to help other people overcome that obstacle of like thinking about these tools, adopting tools, building tools, buying tools, whatever it is. And part of that is just legal education through this program called AI University. So I think, yeah, I'm really excited about it.
So if folks wanted to go to AI University, like where do they go for that?
Yeah, check out justtech.com. There's a hyphen between just and tech. Find me on LinkedIn, Sateesh Nori, and you'll see all of this stuff there. Look forward to the Augmented Lawyer, which hopefully I can finish writing and it'll come out before all of this is irrelevant and our robot overlords take over. But yeah, and I'm happy to chat with people, reach out to me. I'd love to have conversations like this. And I'm learning more than, ever before in my career. I think this is a really interesting moment in the law and in the world too. So I can't wait to see what happens next.
Well, thanks again so much for coming on Law Subscribed Live.
Thank you, Matthew. This is really fun.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.